Good morning and welcome to our webinar on what's new in Dynamics GP and the product roadmap. My name is Jenny Tomlinson and I am the marketing manager for Enhance. I will be acting as the moderator for today's presentation. I'm joined by my colleague Steven MacDonald, who is Enhance's pre-sales consultant. Before I hand over to Steve, I'd just like to review a few simple housekeeping items. We expect the webinar to last approximately 45 minutes. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on demand. All participants are set to listen-only mode and will remain so for the duration of the webinar. If you have a question, click the question button on the right-hand side of your screen. In the new pane that opens, type your question in the top box and click Ask. Do feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar, but due to time constraints, we will answer them offline afterwards. With that, I'd like to hand you over to our presenter, Steve. Over to you.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for everyone attending. So today we're going to go through what's new in Dynamics GP. We're going to include demo of GP2018 in R2 and demonstrate some areas of the new features that have come through the various versions, which are very much useful. I've been of use to some of our clients over the days since GP2018 R2 came out. A bit of focus on reporting, and then an area of where we've come in and put some modules in place where functionality has been missing with GP and some of our third parties as well, and finish up with the roadmap for Dynamics. Okay, so what's new in GP? I'm going to section it off into the different sort of areas. So first of all, finance. There's been a range of different improvements, of which start with the budgeting side. So GP's had budgeting for quite a while, and over the time it's just been improved. So if you're not doing it already, it's very easy, even with some earlier versions, to get budgets imported into GP using Excel. So people are getting the format of the budget together, using the wizards within GP, exporting it to Excel, getting their budget holders to update the figures, and they're importing it back in. What's come in the later versions, which wasn't there earlier, was an exception report to just tell you where there's any issues or errors during that import, just to help with that process. There's been improvements with the year end. So you, as a user before in earlier versions, you would have a backup to take before you do a year end because you couldn't undo it. Now you're actually able to do a year-end undo, and there's a progress bar as well, so that helps with that process. There's things like fixed assets, which people still aren't using, and that's a really strong module and worth having a look at whether or not you're looking to upgrade. Copy and pasting journals into GP came in GP 2013, and with the document attach area, which we'll focus on today as well, that's just improved over time. There's also an improvement in GP2018 R2 regards to displaying historical years in the summary and detail inquiries. So that being said, I'll have a look through of GP2018. So this is the homepage of GP2018 R2. As I look and feel, it's very much similar to GP as of old. There's not a whole new user interface that your users will need to learn. The main improvements that Microsoft have put into place are more on the ribbon that came into place 2013 onwards, whereas older versions were still a bit more old looking. So going into some of those areas we've discussed, copy and pasting journals, very simple. As long as you've got the right format in Excel, copying those figures, clicking the paste button, and it's going to bring through all those descriptions and the amounts. Now, what's new and improved over the newer versions, what users are utilizing, is this attach feature. This is across the board, which will highlight a few areas within GP. So very quickly, you've done your working in Excel, you've put that detail into the journal, you can now go ahead and attach that your Excel sheet as part of your sort of audit history. So that's one example of where people are using document attach and some of the improvements of productivity within GP. Historical years, so summary wise, before we could only see the current year. Now you're actually able to go back and see various different years over time of the different figures, and that's on the summary and the detailed inquiry screens. And that includes the drill backs and go-tos, so you're able to actually drill back through to those historical transactions. Another area where they've done something new within GP2018 R2 is in the posting setup. You're able now to have a transaction level posting through to the general ledger. So you can post through from batches and post through with individual transactions. So previously you could only mark to have batches post through to GL. However, if you allowed posting transactions without a batch, there was not an option to post through to GL. So that's now been resolved, and so you can get more productivity from the solution. Onto the sales side, there's been quite a numerous areas where there've been improvements, and I'll focus on a few here. So we're going to go through a demonstration of a transaction where the document attached and emailing has come into play there. I want to focus on a few areas, including the credit limit, navigation lists, and the different views, what they've put into place. So back into GP, into the sales area. I'm going to start off on the left-hand side here. So you may have this in your current version, and it's an area that is not utilized very well. It's called navigation lists. So from here, that's been improved in GP2018. You can very easily multi-select various different customers. You can then put them as, hold them as inactive. You go ahead and print statements for them. There's lots of different actions at the top here. And it's very easy to actually change your filters and results of what you can see here. So it's a bit like smart lists, but then you've got all these extra functionalities that you can actually apply to those records. So something really to go for and have a look at yourselves. One of the things that they've improved over time is in regards to the credit limit and warning sign. So this user here, this customer here, they've gone over their credit limit. We've now got a warning sign here on their record, but when we go into the transaction, you'll see how it also pop up as a warning sign before anyone would process things going forward. Just a few areas in the top here I wanted to focus on. So document attach, we've got a product list attached, and that's then attached to that record to the customer, and we've also got it set to flow through into transactions and being able to send as an attachment. We can also, from this window, email out statements very quickly, and this button will just collate which statements you want to email. The all-in-one viewer gives users a range of different transactions. You can change which ones if you're not using the quotes, this view. But essentially, from this view, looking at a specific customer, you might have them on the phone. You could quickly check a payment that you've got for them. What invoices it will then relate to and orders will actually appear on this screen. You can expand on them to see a bit more detail. So it just gives you a real good view and a different inquiry screen to documents. So creating a transaction on an invoice, the first other area what they've improved a lot across the board is the sorting. So one area here, what people always found frustrating is being able to find the record they really need. They've been able to exclude inactive customers very easily with just a click, and you're able to actually increase the type of sorts that you've got here and save them as favorites. So you can have different favorite list of customers that you've got, or it could be vendors or accounts. Across the board, you can create sorts which really improve the look and find and usability of the system. So I've selected my user which had a credit limit, was over their credit limit. Straight away it's popped up with this window asking me if I want to continue. So it's just giving that extra power to knowledge of what's going on with those users before you go and proceed. putting in a basic line here, and before we go ahead and process anything further, you can see that on the top here we've got the attach button, and this is actually brought through that document that was attached to the main page for the supplier, for the customer. Clicking attach, we can attach even further information. So in some cases, one of our clients, they do a lot of work out of the system in Excel because of the complexities of what they supply to their customer. So when it comes to actual GP, they have quite simple lines of service and some items, and then they break it down further using Excel sheets. So with this in place, we've attached it here. Within the actions, we can actually select which ones we want to send through as part of the invoice and the email that's going to go out to that customer. Going through that email option, they would actually have those attachments. So one's from the master record, so that's a list of products potentially, or it could be their payment terms, various different things you could include there. And then we've got the attachment specific to this, this record, which then would support this invoice. The other area that they've made improvements in is in the batches for receivables. So we've now got the button here for monthly, or when you select the bi-monthly or semi-monthly options within the batch, you can actually use the last day of the month. So before it was only 30 or 60 days, it would calculate. Now it'll actually work out what's the last day of the month for you. So as an overview of document attach, we saw one area where that's being used within transactions in the sales side, but in finance, we saw as well, you can attach things to journals, you could do things to checkbooks as well, whether it's bank information. On the sales side, whether it's on the sales order processing invoices, normal invoice entry, or on the customer card. Purchasing, you can attach things through from the requisition, purchase order, any invoices you've got on the vendor card. And there's a whole range of different areas. Pretty much the whole system now has got the ability to attach documents. And these can flow from the master record, as we saw, or we can attach them to transactions. And we'll see later on the workflow capability. They can actually be attached to workflows as well for approval. So that's really useful going forward, especially attaching to emails, whether it's to customers or internal for approving. Onto the purchasing side. Within purchasing, we've got the whole range now within GP. We've been able to create a requisition, having finance convert that into a PO, sending that out as in an email to a supplier. You can do the receipting side as well. But on here, I've just got the invoice, so that's matching against the PO. You can then attach that invoice that you've got as a PDF or an email into the actual documents and held within GP. And at these stages, any of them, we can have the workflow kick in, have approvals, have all your delegated authorities there in place, making sure that it's all approved before you go ahead and go for payment. And then we've got the EFT side, so creating the bank file, which then you can upload to the bank. Again, we've got improvements with the sorting to improve that usability. We've got an all-in-one viewer for purchasing as well. And the navigation list, again, we've got the ability to do lots of different functionalities, whether it's marking multiple vendors inactive or just quickly finding out a bit more information about them and your current balance with them. You're able to default within the system now a checkbook ID when you've got payables batches, just improving that process, and the ability to put vendors on hold, and a bit similar to when we saw in the sales of having the warning sign, a similar warning sign as that. So I just wanted to go in and touch on a few areas of the process for the whole purchase to pay process we've got, which GP uses. So GP, over the years, it's had a web client, and the web client is actually improved over those different versions. So it's now at a version which can use various different browsers, whether that's Chrome or Internet Explorer. Very easy to deploy that, and it's using HTTPS, so that means it can be accessed if you need it to be outside your network. So you don't have to be on the actual network for your organization to go ahead and access this site. So we've seen some organizations putting this in place, and there's a different user type as well. So you've got your full user of GP, and you get more of a self-service user, so a bit of different price point, reflecting just the needs of what they need to have. So for this user here, you can see they come to their homepage, they've got their procurement side right in front of them. They very quickly can enter a new requisition. They've got a quick list of their previous or current requisitions that go into place. And having a look at them, you can see the sort of window and functionality that they've got. So they've got quite a lot of functionality. Using GP, you could restrict some of those fields that they can see or have access to. But essentially, from this point, a user who's currently not had access to GP could just enter a requisition. They could, if you've got inventory, they could actually use and look for inventory items, or they could just enter miscellaneous information. They can find suppliers that have already been approved for these for use by the organization. They can put some account codes in or change them if they've had access to them. And from here, they can very easily kick off a workflow from submitting these requisitions, of which one would go out to the necessary people in regards to who should be approving things. As an email, we've just got an example here. So if you had an attachment, that would come through as well. And as a user, they'll get the line information, what's going on. They can very easily go ahead and click through, see more detail as an approver. And from the email, they could easily approve, reject, and even delegate and add comments as well. So very simple system for end users who have not used GP before, to give them the power to enter requisitions, approve things, and as a finance team, there's a lot more control there you've got. When it comes into GP, if you've not seen it before, it actually brings in through as a purchase requisition. So it's a different transaction type than you might have seen before. From here, the finance team can then have a control of this, can decide whether or not they're happy with the supplier that's been attached to this, to the account details. Perhaps you've got a set item that they're looking to purchase. You've actually got terms of a different supplier and different rates that you should be using. So you've got control of the buying here before then converting to a purchase order. From the purchase order, then you've got the ability very easily to then control what you'll spend. You've got all the smart lists that hang off it, the ability to attach information here, all those workflows that you can kick into place, all the way through to matching an invoice off against the purchase order. Again, on these navigation lists, we've got different ones here. You can see we've got we've got a warning against, because they've been marked as temporary. We can put multi-select different ones and put holds on. And at the very bottom, you can see how it's giving us a snapshot of the contact, the address, the current balance, and information about that supplier. We've got that on the customer side as well. And from here, very easily, again, can use the all-in-one viewer, of which you can start to have a look at which purchase orders, which receipts, invoices have been put against that supplier. So workflow, it's utilizing the GP web client, of which can be used across various different browsers. The license type, a lot cheaper, so you don't have to give a full user license to different people who need access to that. Remote users very easily be able to use that. The email functionality with the different detail that they can provide, very easy for approvers to either approve just using the email, or you can give them access again to GP and the web client to view that information. And it's across the different series. So at the very top here, we've got a few different points on the left-hand side. So on the finance side, whether someone's entering a new account, that can be approved. Whether it's batch approval for transactions, that can go through workflow. In GP2018 R2, we've got on the sales side, we've now got receivable batch approval and sales transaction approval. On the purchasing side, we've gone through those different options. The one which we didn't look at was the EFT bank details. So any amendments, whether it's on a vendor where you could have new vendors being created or any edits, that can go through approval, just giving you control on, especially with EFT bank details. And it's been improved over the years with reminder emails that can be set up to make sure that people aren't missing things, copying workflow steps, and all of the smart lists behind it which are required to manage the process. So next area I want to highlight very briefly is security. Over the versions, they've made it a lot easier, Microsoft, to copy different user security to other new users, whether it's a new person coming in, whereas before it is quite difficult to do that and to make sure it's all set up correctly. But one thing we've been finding very recently is that some organizations have still got each user have got carte blanche, got power user to be able to access absolutely everything in the system. Now, with GDPR data coming in and those regulations, we want to make sure that you're locking down what people can see, just with the whole control and auditing to make sure that your end users who are processing and the people who should be approving have got different rights. So if you've not done it, do have a look at the different security groups that are out the box of GP. From there, you can create new ones and copy them and amend them to your wish. All the way through to making sure that different users who've got access to the companies that they should have access to as well. Moving on to reporting, we've got Smart List Designer. It's a out-of-the-box, not as functional version of Smart List Builder, which was a tool to help build smart lists. I think it's still a technical tool. There was a question about that before the webinar. I think that I'll highlight some other tools which maybe are more friendly for end users. So it's still a tool which you need to have a bit of consultant knowledge or knowledge of the back end of GP to actually build those smart lists together. But if you've got only a few requirements to build some smart lists, then a consultant or a technical person from your own end could easily build them and they'll be held within smart lists. There's no new go-tos. It can display credits, debits then credits, whereas before that was reversed. It's now exporting as formatted numbers, whereas before it was just as text, so it's very difficult to do any further calculations and formulas using Excel. As a default, an admin can set favorites that people add and when they're amending smart lists, so it will just set to their user, so when they create a favorite, it just saves by user rather than system. So one thing we've definitely found is a lot of organizations end up with a huge list of smart lists which have been modified by a range of different users, and some people come and go, they don't know which ones need to be cleaned up or removed. So by setting it by user just removes that element. So as a user yourself, you just see the smart list that you need to see rather than seeing absolutely everyone in the organization who's created one. Anyone who's using Agile Accounting, they've changed the display in GP2018. So you've now got extra columns for the different AA types, which enables you to filter a lot better for reporting what's going on with those different transactions. Before it was lumped together as a whole column string, so very difficult to sort of work out what was going on with that transactions without exporting it to Excel and breaking that column out together. Management Reporter, with the later versions, it's now got unlimited viewers if you've already had Management Reporter, so that's very useful to push that out to further users. It's still just looking at the general ledger, so just getting your management reports, but still a useful tool. So let's have a quick look at some of those different areas within GP. So smart list wise, I've touched on a few different areas there. One other thing what I think is really useful from very early versions wasn't in place with regards to the view. So before, the view of the file and the actual details was about a third of the screen. You could never change that, and so you'd always have to export it to Excel before you could really use a smart list. So now the viewability is a lot better. Up here, what we said about Smart List Designer, that's in place. In regards to columns, I think there's even more columns that they've added. So if there's any specific smart lists or requirements you've got for reporting, there's probably more options you've got with the extra columns that they've added. Definitely worth keeping favoriting of those different smart lists to keep up to date and make sure that the smart lists that you've got in place don't get out of control. The go-tos that they've got in place are a lot better, so you're able to find your transaction from within smart lists and the various different smart lists and very much quickly go ahead and view that information. Exporting information out into Excel is really easy as well. On Management Reporter, so Management Reporter has a look and feel. It's been generally improved over the different versions. There's not a lot of energy now going into Management Reporter. There's a few fixes that they're doing with it. I think the main push on Microsoft now is Power BI, which we'll look at. But if you've not seen Management Reporter before, you've got your main designer tool, you have got your viewer tool, but putting it out into the web like this is very easy for users to go ahead and change the report, so they can change the different reporting options. They can again go to different reports and information there. They can change the currency as well, so if you've got different currencies set up rather than just your functional currency, you can actually change those within the Management Reporter report. You can change what information you can see, so you can actually add the comments. If there's a chart on there, that can be displayed, or it could just be summary lines. It's very easy to download that into Excel as well. On the reporting tree wise, so in this report, we've got a summary of all the units of which have been set up in GP. So this is against one of the chart of accounts segments, but it's very easy to actually go ahead and click one of those different departments and change all the figures underneath. And as always with Management Reporter, you've got quite a few different levels of drill down, so you can drill down, see the information underlying, and see all the way through to what was built up on that. Next on the reporting side is Power BI. So we've built a Power BI reporting pack off GP data to just give you an example of what is capable with GP. So here you can see we've got an example data here. We've got various different countries or different companies that we've got here with information. Easily clicking that's just going to change all the graphs underneath, change the list, and it's going to show us exactly where they're based on a map. Going through these, you can just see report by report. We've got filters above, so we've got different years of data, quickly changing one of those filters, and the periods is going to refresh all the information underlying, including the graphs. And we can multi-select various different years. And on these list type views, you can actually expand them further. So we can actually open them up, get a bit more detail if there's anything there, and even build in drill backs, so links back to GP if required. So just go through a few of these. You can see we've got a full board pack here of information that we've built up. Like I say, just very easily to the Power BI, changing the filters dramatically changes all the reports underneath. Another great thing with Power BI I find is that sometimes you get a lot of users who it's easy enough to share these reports out to and subscribe to them, get them set up, but sometimes you've got people you need to report to who don't necessarily have access to your systems. So you might have people on your board who need to see this information, but you're not really going to give them a license, or they don't really have an account with you. So from the file and export to PowerPoint, you can quickly create a PowerPoint pack of all these different reports, whether that's you're walking into a boardroom to do a presentation on these figures, or you can email those out to them. So there's a few people I know on the call who are new to us. So for those who aren't aware, we are still the largest GP partner in EU. It's still a big focus of ours. We support all the versions of GP, even though as we're doing this webinar, it'd be a lot easier to upgrade and get everyone onto more of a consistent later versions, but we have some people still on some of the really early versions, and we still support those organizations. And that's all with the experience development, delivery and support teams, with some people who've got 20 years experience and have been a part of the GP world since before it was even part of Microsoft. We also provide technical support and services, so that's more on the SQL and server side. So if you need help with regards to setting up servers, SQL, the backups, that side of things, we can help with that. Some of the latest things that we're doing with GP, we've actually developed a module for making tax digital for VAT, which is a legislation coming into play very soon. And some of you might have already been on a webinar or had conversations with some of our representatives about them. So that's for GP10, 2010, 13 and 15, as Microsoft are doing something on that, and that's going to come into place for GP2016 and 18 only. There's actually going to be an update from Microsoft this Friday with a hotfix for GP2018 and 2016, which will detail what MTD will actually be Microsoft side, what they will cover. We do a lot more cloud hosting service, so whether that's on a multi-tenant sort of basis or private hosting, we can actually host your GP servers and the application in the cloud for you. We've got a disaster recovery service now in place as well, so we can help organizations take a copy of their backups, their environment, their GP installation into Azure, into a cloud off your organization's environment, to make sure that if anything happens in regards to disaster recovery with your own environment and your own infrastructure, you very quickly could get up and running because it's all copied into the cloud. We've got a new module that we're working on in regards to GDPR, so that's going to assist organizations with the removal of data of their choosing or anonymizing of data from GP. Now, we've done a lot of work, as you can see in the center here, of different modules. So on the EFT with bank, adding statements. Miradas was a very historic and keeps on going with us in regards to distribution, with EDI included. Purchase management, still a module that we've got in place, even though out of the box, GP is now covering some of that functionality and including VAT module. But we can't do everything, so we've got lots of different partners from across the board of GP to cover various different areas. So whether it's on the reporting side, so if you're struggling with regards to things like Smart List Builder or Smart List Designer, and they're too much a technical tool, and you want something that's more friendly for end users, then Jet and Sharplight are very much the tool which is potentially for you. Audit trails from FastPath, expenses from Concur, Dracier for Spindle, which is document distribution software, Credit Hound, which then can help with your collections of from your customers. E1's got Smart List Builder, we've mentioned. Smart Connect, which is a tool which can help to do with integrations of various different pieces of software, and Extender, which can help extend the windows of GP. Scribe, which is another integration tool. And lastly with Jet, so we talked about Jet reports, but they've got a new solution in regards to the budgets. So that's a tool which, budgeting wise, from outside of GP, all your budget holders using their hub can input their information, comments, and that can go through workflow and approval before inputting back into GP. So it's a bit of a stronger budgeting tool. We're seeing people looking at that, especially if they had FRX previously, obviously it's got a little bit more capabilities than GP to be able to do some areas of forecasting with the reports built on top. In regards to the roadmap, so this is the latest published sort of roadmap from Microsoft, which goes through various different versions. I think, as you've seen from today, there's been a lot of areas which they've improved just the usability and just enhanced the system for the day-to-day use. There's a lot of technological improvements they've done, whether that's with Power BI, whether it's the web client, the web browser they've done. They've done things with that all-in-one viewer. The latest versions, we've clearly got MTD, making tax digital, coming into place. But across the bottom, you might see we've got a running sort of theme of top features requested by clients. So I've got a slide on that. So that's a web page which yourselves as users and us as partners, we can actually influence the future of GP. The other point, what came in 2018 R2, which is the top point on that area, was the intelligent edge. So the intelligent edge is a term used by Microsoft for on-premise devices, so in this case being GP, and it enables them to be connected to the cloud using Business Central. So with the intelligent edge, you can essentially seamlessly connect your GP instance to an instance of the intelligent cloud, as Microsoft call it, and it's utilizing Business Central, which is a Dynamics 365 solution. When the connection is made, the data is essentially securely replicated from GP to the cloud, and you can decide which companies, if not all of them, which ones you want to replicate. And within the home page of GP, you now get a bit more actionable analysis and content back about what's going on with the information, because it's utilizing the Power BI, Power Apps, Microflow, and AI capabilities of the Microsoft Cloud to provide those insights and messaging. So currently within GP, we've got purchasing information being replicated. I was looking after I got a chance to speak with the developers of this feature at a conference last year, and essentially that was a version 1. So I think over the next versions of GP, or even maybe with GP2018 with just hot fixes, they will expand that to give even more data replication from GP into the cloud to use all those tools. As I was mentioning in regards to top requested features, that's the site there. So that's across all the Dynamics solutions. You can go in, so you can see on the right hand side here, we've got the various different solutions that they've got ideas for, and GP really is one which the community's embraced, and there's hundreds of different ideas of which people have been voting for and submitting their ideas, and you're getting immediate feedback from the developers of whether or not it's under review, it's been rejected, it's something they're considering, and they'll start putting notes about when or if they'll be doing it, which versions that will be coming in. So it's something I think all of you, it just gives you a good idea of the roadmap and where things are going with GP going forward. So Dynamics overall, we've talked about GP, we've got ongoing development with that. I think we'll have a version probably called GP2019 this year. We'll have then GP2020 at some point as well. And generally we're seeing a move from a sporadic different time zones, or it was December sort of releases sometimes with Microsoft. We're now seeing more of a spring and autumn release. So we'll see, hopefully after this hotfix for GP2018 R2, we'll get some more news about what's the next version of GP and what's going to be included. Just to start going through the different solutions, I think overall the picture's simplifying a little bit more. So we've got Dynamics 365 Business Central, which is a cloud SaaS ERP solution. A bit similar sort of capabilities to GP, it's still a new solution, so it can't cover everything that GP's got, especially when you look at the third-party offerings, which is a very mature market for GP. Dynamics Nav is actually going to be rebranded as Business Central, so that name and that solution is going to go away. It's going to become Business Central, whether that's on-premise or cloud. And just to finish the picture, so what was CRM, which is a huge area for us, it's now called Dynamics 365 Customer Engagement, That's been in the cloud and a Dynamics 365 product for quite a few years now, and very much top of its game, a really good solution, and I think something what all of you should have a look at if you've got a CRM solution. AX, formerly known as AX, is now called Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations. So the picture's simplifying a bit more. We're going to have a few Dynamics 365 solutions, but we're still going to have GP ongoing as an on-premise real solid solution, especially with the numbers of clients that Microsoft got with it. It's not going away. Just to finish off the last sort of slides, so we've got this year a huge range of different webinars that we've got in place, and we'll keep on growing these, especially with the third parties. So I've just starred a few of which I think would be useful to this audience. So we've got things, another one regards to Making Tax Digital, our solution, if you've not seen that before. If you are interested in the cloud and a software as a service type solution, then have a look at Business Central. We've got a webinar this month for that. We've got some more ones focused on GP, so year-end processing in GP. That's going to be a really interesting one, worth attending. An introduction of Power BI, so you've seen a little bit what I've done with it, so there'll be a bit more of a session on that in the following month. Workflow, which we touched on today, there'll be a whole webinar on implementing workflow in GP2018. And lastly on here, we've got loads of different events that we're attending, but we're also holding an event in London for GP customers, and that's in May 23rd. For any of these events, do go ahead and register on our website. So the link's there at the bottom. Do get in contact if you've got any more questions about the webinars that we've got in place, or if you've got any ones that you're actually interested in us putting in place for you. Okay, thank you very much for your time today. I hope you've sort of seen that GP, especially 2018 R2, quite a strong solution, whether it's across the sales area, purchasing, some of the enhancements in finance and reporting. There's a lot of options out there to strengthen and improve your day-to-day use of GP, so worth considering. Do get in contact, whether it's with these contact numbers, which is the sort of generic enhanced ones, or if it's you've got a specific contact account manager, do get in contact and arrange whether it's a further demo or you've got any specific questions about the process. Get in touch and we'll be happy to answer them. Thanks again for your time. We'll catch you next webinar.
Thanks very much, Steve. So that concludes today's session. I would like to thank you all for joining. Please keep a lookout in your inboxes over the next few days, where we will send you a link to today's recording. Once the webinar has closed, there's a short survey that will pop up, so we'd really appreciate if you could take a few moments to complete that. Once again, thank you for joining and have a great day.